On September 9th, Apple was holding its Surprise and Shine keynote, a fitting name given all the expected changes this year. It's the same keynote Apple has held for years, but this one's a little bit different. For the first time in a while, it's under the new CEO John Ternus and not Tim Cook. And there's likely no base iPhone this fall, and Apple's finally launching its first foldable iPhone. And in the middle of all of this, memory chip prices are so high that even Apple hasn't been able to shield customers from it. Nothing Apple does is an accident, so when they're forced to make changes and their keynote looks this different, it's worth asking how they're adapting and what this means going forward. So what are we actually expecting this fall? Of course, the iPhones, which we'll get to, but also the usual Apple Watch refresh and potentially some new smart home products like an updated HomePod Mini, an Apple 4K TV, and a long-rumored Home Hub. Of course, the release of some software like macOS, iOS, and iPadOS 27, which have been in beta since WWDC earlier in the year. The man presenting these new products is John Ternus, as I previously said, who was the Senior Vice President of Hardware Engineering before being promoted to CEO. His background is in mechanical engineering and not in business or supply chain like Tim Cook.
The magic mouse.
Regardless of how you feel about Tim Cook, he spent his career mastering the business of Apple, supply chain, margins, operations, and he was really good at it too. He took Apple from a $350 billion company to one worth trillions today. His way of leading was different from Steve Jobs. Jobs is remembered as the innovator and the visionary. Cook led with supply chain and operational discipline instead. But Cook once shared a piece of advice that Jobs gave him when he was taking over as CEO, and it was to never ask what Steve Jobs would do, but just to do the right thing.
His advice to me was never ask what I would do, just do the right thing.
This is a piece of advice that I imagine Cook will pass down to successor John Ternus. I bring this up because if Ternus leads with his own strengths, hardware, product, and engineering, instead of trying to run Apple the way Cook did, we could potentially see a genuinely different era for Apple's products going forward. Which brings us to the clearest example of that shift already happening, the foldable iPhone. Foldables have been around for well over 5 years now, and Apple is finally releasing their first one. They've come a long way too. A lot of the early issues are gone. Apple's releasing theirs at a time when the tech is mature and the experience doesn't require many compromises anymore. They've also gone with the wide aspect ratio, which, as we've seen with the Galaxy Z Fold 8, has been well received and is clearly the desired format, at least when compared to tall foldables. But rumors suggest that this phone will be called the Ultra, but whatever the name ends up being, it'll be Apple's most expensive iPhone to date. And in the lineup, of course. That brings the lineup to 6 phones: the 18e, the 18, the 18 Pro, 18 Pro Max, and the iPhone Air, and now the Ultra. And then with the other products they're launching, which is probably part of the reason why Apple's splitting the launch this year, releasing only the 18 Pro, Pro Max, and now the Ultra, with the rest coming later in the spring. It sort of makes sense. Cramming that many launches into one September event was probably a lot for Apple's engineering and marketing teams. And then splitting that into 2 also means that Apple isn't just in the news cycle for a few weeks in the fall. It'll be back in the news cycle again 6 months later. But when I first heard the news, I expected the Air to be batched with the fall launch because of the price tag, but I guess not. Then I thought about it, and if the Pro models are about to get more expensive thanks to the RAM shortage and whatever, maybe keeping the Air in the cheaper spring batch keeps the separation between affordable and flagship. But just to be clear, I don't know which phones are getting more expensive and how much more expensive, but it is expected. And probably not a surprise. Many of their other products have already gone up in price, and Cook himself has already said on the record that price hikes are unavoidable. So why hasn't the iPhone already gone up in price? Well, Apple's had long-term agreements with its memory suppliers that cushioned it from the shortage, but those deals only covered pricing through the first half of this year. With memory prices from their suppliers having spiked since then, this keynote might be the moment that protection runs out for Apple. Every product, every price, and every date gets planned out way in advance by Apple, which is why this keynote will be so different from the past. A new CEO, no base iPhone, a new foldable getting the flagship treatment, and prices are going to go up. To be fair, high prices for Apple products is not surprising, but this time Apple's being forced to adapt to something that it cannot control, a memory market being reshaped by AI demand. And the person adapting to this all is someone whose entire 25-year career at Apple was spent solving hardware problems, not negotiating supply contracts. Apple is about to be ran under someone who thinks like an engineer instead of an operator, which can be a really good thing. We'll just have to wait and see in the future. But stay tuned for coverage of the Surprise and Shine event and everything announced. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Your likes and comments are appreciated and they really help the channel out. I'll catch you guys on the next one.